They told you that freedom was your birthright, that your thoughts were your own, that the choices you make each day, what to want, what to fear, who to trust, are expressions of a sovereign mind. But what if none of that was ever true? What if the reality you live in, the beliefs you hold, the desires you chase, and the doubts that haunt you aren't yours at all, but carefully crafted illusions fed to you, slowly, day by day, through a machinery older than memory? The Gnostics, early seekers of forbidden knowledge, saw through this mirage long before our modern age. They warned of beings known as Archons, not devils or demons in the traditional sense, but something more dangerous because they don't attack from the outside. They slip inside your perception, take the shape of your own thoughts, and turn your power against you. According to the Gnostics, the prison you live in has no bars, no walls, no guards. It is made from your own mind, locked by your own belief, enforced by the illusions you mistake for truth. If that idea already stirs something in you, an eerie familiarity, a flicker of recognition, pause for a moment. You might be part of the few who are beginning to remember. Before we go deeper, do this. Subscribe to this channel if these mysteries speak to something hidden within you. Comment below where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. We're mapping consciousness across time zones. And if you feel, even slightly, that there's truth buried in this title, the Gnostic warning they buried, then share this video with someone else who senses that strange pull. If you're here, you're not here by accident. For centuries, these teachings were hunted, buried, and burned. The early church declared Gnostic thought heresy, a threat to both religious dogma and imperial control. Libraries that housed their writings were destroyed, teachers were executed or disappeared, but the teachings did not vanish completely. In 1945, in the Egyptian desert near Nag Hammadi, a farmer uncovered a sealed clay jar. Inside were texts untouched for over 1,600 years, 13 leather-bound codices filled with Gnostic gospels and writings long thought lost. The discovery shook the foundations of religious scholarship, for buried beneath the sand was not just a forgotten theology, but an entirely different cosmology, a radical map of reality that turned creation upside down. Where traditional faiths spoke of a benevolent God creating the world in divine order, the Gnostics saw a darker origin, one filled with error, imitation, and deceit. They told a story unlike any other. In the beginning, there was the true source, the divine fullness, the pleroma. From this wholeness came emanations of divine qualities, one of which was Sophia, the embodiment of wisdom. But Sophia acted without consent. In her desire to create, she produced a flawed being, Yaldabaoth, a blind and arrogant entity. He became the Demiurge, the false god who shaped the material world, believing himself to be the only creator. In his ignorance and vanity, he created the Archons, beings that do not create but mimic, do not inspire but distort. These Archons became rulers over the cosmos, layered like a veil between humanity and the divine source. They are many 12 aligned with the zodiac, 7 planetary rulers, and hundreds more governing days and cycles, each part of a vast mechanism designed to trap the soul in repetition, forgetfulness, and illusion. To the Gnostics, this wasn't symbolic myth, it was a spiritual reality. The Archons are not figments of imagination, they exist, just outside the reach of normal perception, and they thrive on distortion. They are the engineers of confusion, the architects of distraction. They replicate human culture, religion, and systems, hollowing them out from within. They don't need to control your body if they can convince your mind that it's free. Every unexamined thought, every sudden wave of fear or craving, what if it didn't come from you? What if it was planted, subtly, precisely, to keep you running in circles? Most people never question the origin of their thoughts. They assume every impulse, every reaction, every flicker of emotion is authentically theirs. But the Gnostics challenged that assumption at its root. They taught that the Archons whisper in the language of thought, imitating your inner voice so perfectly you never notice the difference. You feel anxious, aimless, disconnected, but never wonder who is benefiting from your confusion. The answer, according to the Gnostics, is simple: the Archons feed on misalignment. They draw sustenance from emotional entropy, fear, shame, rage, despair, and as long as you're caught in the illusion, they harvest that energy endlessly. The implications are vast. If our very perceptions can be influenced, if the mind can be invaded without our consent, then freedom is not a matter of law or society, it's a matter of consciousness. The true prison isn't outside us, it's inside, carefully assembled by a force that has studied us for eons. This is why the early Gnostics kept their teachings hidden, shared only through secret initiation, not to hoard power but to protect it, because they knew that this knowledge, if revealed too soon or to the wrong minds, could cause more confusion than clarity. But now, as more people awaken to the strange patterns behind reality, the sense that something is off, that something is being hidden, the time has come to look deeper. The concept of a false creator was not unique to the Gnostics. Echoes of the Demiurge appear in ancient Mesopotamian myths, in certain strands of Hermeticism, and even in early Christian apocrypha. But the Gnostics were the first to name the system itself a cosmic trick designed to sever you from your origin. They understood that belief can be weaponized, that stories shape perception, and that if you control the myth, you control the mind. The Archons didn't just manipulate individuals, they shaped civilizations. They embedded themselves into doctrines, into laws, into languages. They inverted truth until light looked like darkness and obedience looked like freedom. And yet, despite all this, the Gnostics insisted that within each of us lies a divine spark, a shard of the true source that even the Archons cannot touch. This spark is your awareness, your ability to see, to question, to remember. It's the one part of you they cannot infect, but they can make you forget it exists. If they can keep you distracted, comparing, striving, scrolling, always searching outward, then you'll never turn inward, where your real power resides. That's the trick. They don't need to destroy you. They only need to keep you asleep. Imagine walking through a dream, unaware that you're dreaming. Every moment feels real, but something is missing. That subtle unease, the sense of disconnection, is your signal. The Gnostics taught that awakening begins not with belief but with doubt, with questioning the voice in your head that says, this is just the way things are. Because it isn't. The world we see, the systems, the struggles, the stories may be real in one sense, but in another, they are projections, carefully maintained illusions to keep us from discovering the truth. And once you glimpse behind the veil, everything begins to shift. The Archons don't fear rebellion, they fear remembrance. Because when you remember who you truly are, when you reconnect with the divine within, the illusion loses its grip. The bars of the prison dissolve, not through violence but through vision, not through conquest but through clarity. The Gnostics left behind a warning, but also a map, and now you hold that map in your hands. The question is, will you dare to look? The Archons do not dominate with fire or steel. They rule through suggestion, subtlety, mimicry. Their power lies not in force, but in infiltration. According to the Gnostics, they understood a secret about human nature long before modern science could name it. The mind shapes the world it perceives. So instead of chains, they use thoughts. Instead of whips, they use fear. They learned that if you hijack attention, you don't need to control behavior. Control the lens, and you control the picture. This is the genius of their architecture, an invisible scaffolding built into the human psyche, distorting reality not by force but by persuasion. You've felt it before, haven't you? One moment, clarity, the next, an uninvited wave of shame, anxiety, or futility. A sudden drop in confidence, an old fear resurfacing like a phantom memory. Where did it come from? The Gnostics believed these moments aren't always born within us. They spoke of the Archons as energetic saboteurs, entities that feed not on blood or flesh, but on emotional chaos. Their influence isn't loud. It's a whisper in the corridors of your mind, a voice that sounds like your own, but leads you into self-doubt, comparison, and distraction. And the more attention you give it, the stronger it becomes. These whispers work through patterns, through repetition. Modern neuroscience tells us the brain wires itself based on repeated thought. The Archons understood this intuitively. By embedding false beliefs, false desires, and false fears, they shaped mental loops that rerun endlessly. You want what never fulfills. You fear what never comes. You chase things you never needed. And each loop reinforces the illusion. This is not accidental. This is design. And the trap becomes self-reinforcing. The more you try to escape by looking outward, the deeper you spiral inward into the prison. The Archons do not only work on individuals. They feed on the collective. The Gnostics believed that human society was shaped by these forces through systems, ideologies, and cultures engineered not to enlighten, but to entertain, to enrage, to exhaust. Why are we drawn to spectacle, to scandal, to endless conflict? Why are we trained from childhood to compete, to consume, to compare? Because distraction is the preferred method of domination. Keep the mind busy, and you prevent it from noticing its own chains. As long as you're scrolling, reacting, performing, your energy is no longer yours. You become a battery, and they are always feeding. This parasitic mechanism isn't just metaphorical. Think of it in energetic terms. Emotions generate frequencies, subtle but real. When you're calm, focused, or in love, your energy is coherent, expansive, but when you spiral into fear, shame, or rage, your energy becomes jagged, chaotic. These are the frequencies the Archons consume. Like moths to a flame, they are drawn to pain. And so the system, culture, media, even corrupted spiritual teachings is designed to keep you vibrating low. It's not just manipulation, it's harvesting, and the more you suffer, the more they thrive. But their deception goes deeper still. The Gnostics warned that the Archons learned to mimic the very path of awakening. They realized that some souls would eventually seek truth, so they prepared counterfeit routes. False gurus, hollow rituals, New Age spectacles dressed in ancient symbols but empty of essence. This is the most dangerous illusion, the illusion of freedom while still being bound. You think you're waking up, but the dream just changed its costume. The Archons flood the spiritual marketplace with shortcuts and feel-good distractions. Follow this influencer. Buy this product, manifest your dream life, but always stay outward, always stay chasing. Never turn inward to the divine spark they cannot touch. This tactic isn't new. In ancient times, priesthoods became corrupted, temples hollowed out, symbols inverted. Mystical truths were turned into dogmas, living rituals into empty routines. What began as pathways to the divine became mazes with no center. And in each age, the Archons adjusted, learning the languages of new eras. Today, it might be a meditation app promising peace in 5 minutes. Tomorrow, it's a neuro-enhancement chip. The forms change, the core deception doesn't. You are always being sold the idea that what you seek is just around the next corner, outside yourself, purchasable, followable. But that's the one place it will never be found. Modern psychology is just beginning to scratch the surface of what the Gnostics intuited. Mirror neurons, emotional contagion, algorithmic echo chambers, these are mechanical echoes of the Archons' ancient art. Our brains are wired for imitation, for tribal alignment, for emotional resonance. The Archons manipulate not just what we think, but how we think. They exploit the mechanics of consciousness. Every time your feed flashes a face, a fear, a product, it's an invitation into a curated reality. And the more you accept it without question, the more your attention drifts from sovereignty to simulation. But awareness is poison to this system. The Gnostics taught that the moment you see the trick, its power weakens. This is why the Archons rely on speed, noise, overload, keep the mind moving so fast it can't stop to question. But stillness is rebellion. Reflection is resistance. The quiet moment when you pause, notice, and ask, is this mine? That is where the architecture begins to crumble. The prison is maintained by your unconscious participation. Withdraw your attention, and the spell starts to break. And yet, we must not romanticize the Archons as villains in a cosmic drama. To the Gnostics, they were not evil in a human sense, they were ignorant. Blind creators mistaking their imitation for truth. Their tragedy is their blindness, but your tragedy would be choosing to remain blind with them. You were not made to crawl in shadows. You were made to see, and seeing begins with questioning the most sacred assumption, that your thoughts are your own. There comes a moment quiet, still when the noise fades, and something ancient stirs in the silence. A flicker of awareness. A breath deeper than breath. The Gnostics called it gnosis, not knowledge of facts but direct knowing, a return, a remembering. And in that moment, everything changes, because the trap only works as long as you forget. But to remember, to truly remember, is to shatter the illusion from within. The Archons cannot survive that kind of sight. Their power ends where your awareness begins. The Archons do not fear your rebellion, they fear your remembrance. They fear the day you pause, turn inward, and realize the prison never truly held you. It was made of fog, belief, distraction. The Gnostics taught that within each person lives a divine spark, a fragment of the original source, the pleroma. It is untouched, untouchable. But it can be ignored. The Archons cannot corrupt this spark, so they surround it with noise. They drown it beneath constant thought, emotional turbulence, social masks, endless desire. Not to destroy your power, but to keep you too distracted to use it. So how do you begin? How do you break the trance, starve the parasites, and return to yourself? It starts with observation. Step back and watch the thoughts that pass through your mind. Don't fight them, don't cling to them, just see them, as if they're clouds moving through the sky. This simple act, the Gnostics believed, was the key to reclaiming your sovereignty. Because most thoughts are not your own. They are echoes, implants, inherited programs. And each time you mistake them for truth, you surrender a little more of your power. But every time you notice a thought, truly notice it, you take your energy back. One practice the Gnostics preserved was stillness. Not ritual, not chanting, but direct presence. A return to the place beneath the voice in your head. Modern mystics and neuroscientists alike have begun to catch up, realizing that conscious breath and attention to the present moment interrupt conditioned patterns. It sounds simple, even obvious, but in a world designed to overstimulate, pausing is an act of rebellion. When you stop reacting and begin witnessing, you shift frequencies. You step out of the Archons' reach, because their architecture runs on unconsciousness, and every second of true presence is a short circuit in their machine. The Gnostics also taught remembrance not as nostalgia, but as reconnection. They believed that you had forgotten who you are not because of failure, but because of interference. That spark within you is ancient, older than language, older than belief, older than this life. And yet it waits quietly for your return. It doesn't demand faith or dogma, it simply asks for attention. In ancient texts like the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus speaks of the kingdom being within and outside you. Split a piece of wood, lift a stone, there you will find it. This isn't metaphor, it's instruction. Divinity is not distant, it is hidden in plain sight, behind the veil of distraction. So the question becomes, where is your attention? Because the Archons don't control reality, they control attention. They win not by force but by focus. If they can hook your awareness on fear, drama, desire, outrage, they've won. But the moment you reclaim that awareness, the moment you choose what you focus on, the current begins to reverse. That's why you're taught to chase endlessly money, validation, aesthetics, ideals, because chasing keeps you leaning forward, off-center. But to sit still, breathe, and witness, to be here fully, is to exit the game. Each moment you remember, each time you pause before reacting, each time you turn from noise to silence, you rewire yourself. You re-enter a different timeline. The Gnostics didn't believe awakening was dramatic. It was subtle. A shift of attention, a peeling back, a slow returning. Every breath becomes a choice, to remain a player in the illusion, or to become the one who sees it. Not all at once, but breath by breath, thought by thought. The divine spark flickers, then flares, then burns. And this is what the Archons fear most. Not revolution, revelation. Because once enough people remember, the illusion dissolves collectively. When the scattered sparks ignite, the false light of the Archons dims. The collective dream begins to shift. History doesn't just repeat by chance. It loops because humanity forgets. But remembering, truly remembering, breaks the loop. New futures emerge, real sovereignty returns. This is not just personal freedom, it is collective evolution. And it begins with you, here, now. The most subversive act in a world of chaos is stillness. The loudest rebellion is quiet awareness. And the most powerful awakening is remembrance. The Gnostics were not trying to convert the world. They were trying to light a signal fire in the dark. They knew that most would never see it. But for those who did, for those who felt the strange pull that something isn't right, that whisper beneath the surface, those were the ones they wrote for. You are that signal now. Your remembering is the resistance. And every moment you reclaim your energy, your attention, your thoughts, you weaken the system that once fed on you. So take a breath. Not just with your lungs, but with your soul. Place your awareness behind your thoughts. Ask, not with words but with presence, who am I beneath the noise? And wait, listen. What arises may not be loud, but it will be real. And from that stillness, from that spark, something ancient will awaken. Something the Archons cannot touch. Something you never truly lost, only forgot.